So what we wanted to do here, right? I won't read off each and every line item and presenter here, right? But what we wanted to do was bring some visibility to a number of sort of current topics that are going on. Um, and there will be nothing here really about, the core process as we normally do in our seminars a few times a year. This is more focused on special topics, right? So just a number of things that have been popping up, and we just want to make sure people understand and maybe have the ability to ask some questions about it here going forward. With questions, right? We got time at the end for questions. We'll leave plenty of time. There will be a link posted in the chat here that will take you to a form where you can submit your questions. So we'll sort of gather those up, but you can submit those questions at any time, right? We'll gather them up and we'll address them all together at the end of the presentation. So you can submit those through there. Moving on. So as is our world, right? COVID is still here, hanging on tight. So we're still seeing. Go to the next slide real quick. We're still seeing some minimal impacts. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me do safety moment here for a second, right? We want to touch on, as is customary here at National Grid, we want to kick off our meetings with the safety moment. This one is around ergonomics. Right, we've all been, or many of us have been working remotely here for almost 2 years now, right? I know here at National Grid, it was March 12th, I think, was our last day in the office of 2020. So hopefully we've all improved our remote workspaces over time, but it's good to have a refresher every now and again, making sure that we are paying attention to the height of your monitors, the height of your keyboard, right, the height of your desk, how your chair is set up, right, keeping your feet on the ground, keeping your back straight, keeping everything at arm's length, right, so that you have good posture, so you don't have issues with your back or other body parts, in addition to making sure you have the right background for your eyes, right, and taking eye breaks. And everything we do now is screen related for the most part, as opposed to back in the day when we could be in person and do some of this stuff face to face, or be in a meeting where you weren't directly looking at your computer screen, right? For the most part now, everything we do is screen related. So just keep mindful of those things. It's never too late to make those changes, even though we are hopefully coming to the end of all this COVID stuff, and can maybe get back in person a little bit more often than we have. So keep it in mind. I will now touch on COVID impacts, right? Just to build on that, right? We are very close to blue sky, right? We don't really have resource issues going on, right? The absences have come way down. So really what we're experiencing now are supply chain issues, right? So we are still seeing supply chain issues. We're seeing them with, our normal long lead type items. But then we're also starting to see here over time some of our more common items where we're seeing stuff coming in a little slower, maybe stuff not coming in at the same number of units as we have in the past, right? Things like poles and wires and transformers, right? They are things that we do see on many of our projects. They may not be, DG or site specific type equipment and material, but it is stuff that we do see on most of our projects. And ultimately, if we do experience issues or supply chain and material issues specific to your project, right, we will submit a force majeure as soon as we're aware of it. So we'll get that notice over to you. We'll have those conversations. We'll make sure you know what it is we're dealing with, how we're trying to mitigate it, and what we think the ultimate timeline is going to be there. We continue to work with our vendors, right, to make sure that we're proactively mitigating any of these issues, but this stuff, continues to pop up from time to time. So, and then there is a link here on this page that will take you to some more force majeure notices and information. Moving on to one of the main things we wanted to touch as part of this, right, to take an opportunity to talk about successes from 21. So, here early in calendar year 22, If we can bounce to the next slide. We wanted to touch on what we consider to be DG community successes, right? You know, none of us could have done this alone. This isn't just National Grid, and what we've done. It's 100% in conjunction with all of our partners, right? Who have cited these, worked them through the process. We've done our best to do our part every step of the way. But these are successes that we all share in, right? It's not just utility specific or developer specific. All right. So one of the big things we just want to bring some attention to is sort of what we've hit as a company here at National Grid. We're at 3 gigs now at this point, interconnected, which has taken a number of years, but as you can see, some of those dates there, right? You know, here at the end of 21, we went to that 3 gigs, but then, to get to that first gigawatt, it took us, over 6 years, right, from all this stuff starting. And we got to that 1 gig back in 2016. It took us 3 years after that to get to the 2nd gig, but then only has taken us two years now to add another one, right? So you can see the progression and the volume and what it is we've been able to work through the process here over the last few years to make that happen. And then you can also see some of the stats there around storage, right, and how that has really picked up over the last couple of years, right, to the tune of, we're doing, more than 3 times as much as what we've done in the past. So, it's just massive amount of work working through the process, right? Huge success for the community as a whole. Wrapping it back into Massachusetts for 21, right? We actually, so that 238 megawatts is actually not our, call it annual high. We have had a higher number, only by a few. I think we were off by maybe a couple, 3 megawatts of reaching that high overall, but we were able to reach another record, right? Which is the number of renewable megawatts that were interconnected. In the past, we've had other more prominent types, right? The CHPs and those type of things that wouldn't fall into the renewable category. Right here, we've had a lot of renewables that we were able to interconnect in 2021. So while not a total megawatt high, a specific sector of that, we did reach a very high number. And then again, just specific to Massachusetts around the number of storage situations we have, right? Whether it's storage only that we're working through the pipeline or the solar plus storage that we've seen here. We don't want to forget, right? As I mentioned earlier, I'm more of the standard process guy here at National Grid, right? But we do a ton of work on the residential side, right? The simplified process, the residential interconnections, and that continues to grow, right? I mean, we grew another 13% on top of last year, this year, right? So we're not slowing down in any way, shape, or form. We continue to ramp up. And another huge success that we want to take time and mention is the changes to the tariff, right? Many of you on the phone have been part of 1955 from all the way back in 2019, pre-pandemic, for all the work and conversations that we had there, and the number of parties that were factored into that. And then, some of the orders that came out at the end of 2020, and then the changes to the tariff, right, which we hadn't had any real significant changes to the tariff in a number of years. Getting those changes in 2021, right, coming out of 1955, was a real success for the community as a whole. So with that, just wanted to point out those successes. Thank everybody on the phone, right? Everybody from National Grid and my team, everybody from the development community. Again, none of us could do this alone, and we had another banner year in 2021. So looking forward to 2022 as we get this kicked off here. So with that, we will move into some of our other topics. So I will introduce Jen Shalafo to talk about significant change updates.
Good morning, folks. Jen Shalafo here. I am the supervisor for our pre-ISA team on the CEI Mass Complex team here at GRID. And I am here to talk you through some structure that we've imparted on the treatment of change requests that we receive on pending applications. This is some exciting stuff. It is a huge win for our customers in our efforts to drive project maturity and maintain forward progress for these applications. As many of you may have experienced, through your study endeavors and or construction of your project, if a change to your design comes up or a change to someone else's design comes up, you may experience delays because we parallel path a lot of our processes. And that can have an impact on your application, whether it be as in study or in construction. So as such, we have, again, put some structure around these change requests. We bucketize them into significant and moderate changes. A moderate change is something that would require a restudy and or some sort of engineering diagnostic, but not affecting customers downstream in our queue. And that's an important part of this to note. So these changes might have an effect on your system modifications at the PCC. It might have some impacts to programming or how your system operates, but it doesn't affect other customers. For a moderate change, pre-ISA, we would ask for the restart of our impact study timeline, and there could be financial implications. There could be dollars added to that study cost because we may need to revisit some aspects of a study over again. So in a post-ISA environment, obviously you've all experienced, or most of you have experienced, a restudy when you've proposed a change, and that part of our process wouldn't look any different. We would still collect study dollars for a restudy, and there would be a timeline communicated for our engineers to take a look at the change you proposed. A significant change, however, is one that does impact other customers in our queue. And if you propose a change that is deemed by our engineering staff as significant, we will ask that your application be withdrawn and you reapply. Of course, there's some decision points there. So proposing a change doesn't automatically mean that we will withdraw your application if it's deemed significant. There will be a conversation, ahead of that and a decision point for you as the applicant. So again, just wanted to highlight this does impact both pre and post ISA projects in queue when you propose a change. There is a link on this page to our interconnection documents webpage where under the technical guidance, these details are posted for you if you have further questions. And that is, I think, all we have for moderate and significant change. I can hand it off now to Mike Porcaro, who will address our next topic.
Thank you, Jen. Yeah, this is Mike Porcaro. I'm the DG ombudsperson for New England for National Grid, and I'm going to talk a little bit about a self-performance pilot that is kicking off in Massachusetts right now. So what this is geared around is complex projects where after the impact study is complete, system modifications are identified. And right now, National Grid is always the one who performs the design and construction activities to complete those system modifications that'll accommodate the project before they can come online. And what this pilot is going to allow is for certain system modifications, we would actually allow a select number of projects to go through and perform the design and build of those infrastructure upgrades themselves, and with National Grid oversight, of course, to see how we could maybe enable having that type of construct to go forward. So it was a request that we got from the developer community. We kind of heard that there's a feeling and belief out there that there could maybe be some time gains from this to be able to reduce schedule and some potential cost gains as well. So that's kind of what we heard, and we were willing to go down the path and try out this type of pilot here. So we did collaborate with the industry a bit on this. We talked with Northeast Clean Energy Council, and there were several months of a working group going back and forth to come up with what the criteria would look like. And we do have it ready to go today. So as of the beginning of this month, the pilot is open, and it's going to be open through up until March 2nd. So what the open period is right now is if you are interested in requesting to be part of the pilot, you can submit that request through the chatter function on your particular case that you'd like to have submitted for consideration. So that doesn't mean that you're necessarily in the pilot yet, because it is a pilot and it's a construct that we're trying to test for the first time and try it out to see how well it works. We did consult with other utilities across the country, and it doesn't seem that anyone else is really using a setup like this. So we do appear to be one of the first to go down this path. So we did want to keep it manageable to be able to understand what impacts there may be. So there would only be 5 projects that are going to be selected in the end. And we'd want to pick those 5 projects to try to illustrate all parts of the process so we get a good understanding. But if you are interested in participating, you could submit the request through the chatter function in the portal. And then during the month of March, prior to March 30th, National Grid will be identifying which 5 projects were selected and moving forward from there, allowing those projects to go ahead with the self-performance option. Now, there are a lot of details and caveats and ways of how this pilot would actually be structured, how it would work. There would be a National Grid overview of the projects and a lot of close interaction between the selected project developers and National Grid. And that's all spelled out in the links at the bottom of the slide here. So the self-performance criteria link is a detailed explanation of what the pilot would look like, what you could expect. So it gives you that sense of whether or not it is something you would be interested in and what it would mean for your project potentially. And then the second link we have down there is for the pilot selection criteria. So that goes into a little bit more detail of what we have on the slide here, how you could submit your request to be part of the pilot, and how we're going to go about selecting the requested projects from the pool, how we're going to go about selecting the 5 that we're actually going to go ahead with. That's what's on the second link there. So I want to let you know that the pilot is open. Please feel free to submit if you are interested. And we're looking forward to a successful run of the pilot here. It does have a lot of great opportunities. So that is all we have for self-performance right now. And I think from here, I'll be handing it off to Emily Slack to talk a little bit about energy storage.
All right. Hi, thanks, Mike. So this portion is intended to discuss the concept of operating schedules to be applied to energy storage applications. National Grid has developed a battery operating schedule to be applied to all batteries that are following the complex process. So the schedule is here on the screen. The concepts of the schedule are that there is 24-hour-a-day operation of the battery permitted on a seasonally varying schedule. That schedule has mutually exclusive charge and discharge periods each day, such that, at any given hour, a battery could be either idle or charging if it's in a charge window, or idle or discharging if it's in a discharge window. The schedule outlines the permissible behavior in any given hour rather than any sort of dispatched or mandated operation. So within the confines of the schedule, there is the flexibility to operate the battery as desired, so long as it doesn't attempt to discharge during a charge window or charge during a discharge window. The seasonal variability of the schedule aligns with the Clean Peak Standard and uses the Clean Peak Standard schedule definitions. And generally, it also aligns with high-level system constraints. The premise is that the batteries are allowed to charge during times of high DER output and lower load levels, and discharge during peak loads and times of lower DER. So by doing this, it minimizes the ability of batteries to adversely impact the safety and reliability of the distribution system. That's the underlining technical premise of this schedule approach. So all batteries following the complex process will be analyzed according to this permitted schedule. And before the completion of the impact study, battery control solutions, which would implement this schedule, will need to be provided and reviewed by National Grid. And then those control concepts would also need to be demonstrated at the witness test prior to energization. I think that wraps up schedules.
Good morning. My name is Marissa Soretti, and I'm the New England Portal Specialist here at National Grid. Janelle, next slide, please. So today I'm just going to be going over our new DC coupled generator and storage facility enhancements that will be going into the portal very soon. So in order to accommodate the new Tesla Powerwall Plus equipment, National Grid has made some changes to the NCAP portal to ensure that external users are still able to enter these assets and guarantee data accuracy. Some of these changes will be displayed within the initial triage questions, in the application, and in the equipment selector when it comes time to enter your equipment into the portal. Next slide, please. So we're going to add a new asset record type. So currently in the portal, when you are entering your equipment, we have 5 different types of asset records. We have a panel record, a generator record, storage, protective function, and other. So we are going to be adding on to this list for a new asset record type that's going to be called AC power producing. This new record type will be used for all DC coupled inverters, the new Powerwall Plus models by Tesla as an example. You're going to see this in the equipment selector as shown below. So as you can see, your usual buttons, and then you're going to see that 6th button for AC power producing. Next slide, please. So you're also going to see these changes at the initial triage question level. So when you were entering an application previously within the NCAP portal, you're going to see the following questions that are displayed. So as you can see, generation AC capacity in kW, you have a storage coupling field, you also have a storage field. So next slide, please, Janelle, I'll show you those changes that we've made. So when you see, you're going to see the following when you submit an application. So the field that was labeled as generation AC capacity in kW, it was updated to total nameplate kWAC of newly proposed inverters or rotating machines. We also updated the help text to prevent confusion. We will also no longer require the storage coupling data at this step, as it will be gathered automatically when you enter your assets via the equipment selector. So I did want to just go over that note quickly. So the note just states if you are proposing a factory derated nameplate rating or to use a separate protective device to limit aggregate power output of the site, please list that value instead. And in parentheses, it just clarifies, do not double count DC coupled storage or existing system equipment that will be captured below. Next slide, please. And when you enter your assets within the equipment selector via your application form, once again, I'm just going to verify that you're going to see the following changes to accommodate those AC power producing assets. We are going to remove the add unlisted generator product and add storage product buttons once the AC power producing product is working as expected in the production environment or in live real time. And then all existing generator and storage asset records will be migrated to the new format as well. Next slide, please. And then displayed below will be the new layout for the new AC power producing asset record type. So as you can see, this is what you usually see when you enter your assets. There's going to be a new equipment type listed as generator plus storage to accommodate the new equipment that can be classified as both a generator asset and a storage asset. And the following fields are still required to be filled out with the AC power producing asset record type. The fields in red are still required, as well as identifying the technology subtype when you input your technology type. And I'm going to pass it off to Tara.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Tara Reisner, the lead program manager for the Mass Smart program. Janelle, you can go to the next slide, please. So as many of you know, the SMART program first received DPU approval in late 2018 as a tariff-based program in which the EDCs provide direct compensation to our customers for eligible solar output. The EDCs provide a customer with compensation in the form of bill credits and incentive payment checks exchanged for the customer's energy and RECs. The program capacity was initially limited to 1,600 megawatts of solar across the Commonwealth. In July 2020, the DOER issued revised regulations expanding the overall capacity of the SMART program, adding an additional 1,600 megawatts and making other changes. On December 3rd, 2020, the EDCs filed a revised SMART tariff with the Mass DPU to implement the DOER's new regulations, among other things. Finally, on December 31st, 2021, the Mass DPU issued an order on the Phase 1 Smart Solar Tariff revisions, which expanded the overall capacity of the SMART program by 1,600 megawatts for a total of 3,200 megawatts statewide. The Phase 1 order contains the first set of decisions in the DPU's investigation of a revised tariff to implement SMART 2, is what we're calling the expanded capacity. The DPU is going to issue a Phase 2 order to complete its review of all other SMART issues, but for now, in the Phase 1 order, the Mass DPU states that it approves items including the following. So approved 8 additional capacity blocks, blocks 9 through 16, for a total of 3,200 megawatts statewide. National Grid's portion is another 720 megawatts. Approved the inclusion of behind-the-meter ALBCs, which is a new category of projects designed to ensure that compensation for behind-the-meter and standalone STGUs is more equitable and will facilitate the development of more facilities behind load. Approved the public entity compensation rate adder, denied the pollinator adder, approved the revisions to land use criteria and greenfield subtractors, and approved the adder that all projects that are 500 kW and above will be required to be paired with storage. So additionally, for the expanded capacity blocks 9 through 16, we have revised our incentive payment effective date policy. So for projects in 9 through 16 only, all projects will receive a final SOQ where the incentive effective date is the next billing cycle date after the final SOQ is received. This is not a change for projects that are 60 kW or greater. This only affects projects 60 kW or less. For additional background, after Smart 1 opened in October 2018, the 3 EDCs each release an incentive effective date policy that's posted on each of our company websites as well as the DOER's websites. These policies were different based on how each EDC was able to serve its customers. National Grid's policy for Smart 1 was that A, we will backdate projects less than or equal to 60 kW to the date the generation meter was installed and provide incentive payments for the time period during which they were waiting for their final SOQ. And B, we will not backdate projects larger than 60 kW beyond the first day of the billing period during which the project was connected. So we're changing our policy A, so for all Smart 2 customers that are 60 kW or less, and discontinuing backdating to the generation meter set date. We're not changing anything for Smart 1 customers. So if the customer applied in blocks 1 through 8, there's going to be no changes to that incentive effective date. So going forward in blocks 9 through 16, Clear Result will set the new incentive effective dates by picking the next billing cycle date after the final SOQ is issued. So they'll review the customer's bill and we'll set the date depending on how soon after we set the date the final SOQ will be issued. That being said, we understand that this policy change will affect your projects for Smart 2. We hope that payments will begin more quickly and with fewer mistakes under this new policy. So the next slide will be presented by my colleague, John Tortorella.
Thank you, Tara. Good morning. John Tortorella here, Senior Analyst working on the Mass Smart program. In addition to the changes Tara noted with the expanded smart capacity approved at the end of 2021, and with our backdating policy change, we wanted to highlight the trend in incentive rates. We and the other EDCs are seeing declining incentive rates in the SMART program. For reference, the declining incentive rates, they're a function of the base compensation rates, which decline with each subsequent program block, a feature of the SMART program design, and the current value of energy contributes to this calculation as well. So as an example on the slide here, we have the current small capacity blocks for new applications. These are typical residential customer projects. As you can see, for National Grid in our Mass Electric territory, we're accepting block 10 applications at this time, where the solar incentive payments will be 0 cents per kWh. This is just one example of one project type. So we would encourage you to review the linked SMART behind the meter value of energy workbook to see how these declining incentive rates and value of energy will affect your projects going forward. I'll note here that this example table does not include any adders. Adders can help improve the financials of a project and potentially make them more viable going forward. I will next hand it over to Emily Cayley for an update on My Business Account.
Great, thank you so much, John. Hello, everyone. My name is Emily Cayley. I am the product strategist for My Business Account. We can go over to the next slide. My Business Account is a new National Grid website to help customers easily manage their multiple accounts. And we are very excited that we are getting ready to deploy a new feature on My Business Account, which is more transparency into transferred credits for both satellite and host accounts. As I said, we are getting ready to deploy this. We are saying that it's going to be coming March 2022. So just in the next couple of weeks, we hope to be finalizing this feature. And so let's talk about the main page of My Business Account before I dive in and show you the screens for both the host view as well as the satellite view. First, you'll see this is the main page of My Business Accounts called the Accounts Overview page. There is a listing of accounts there. To help easily find the accounts, you will have in the type section, you'll have an icon that shows that it is either a satellite account or a host account. And then you can help easily identify accounts as well by grouping the accounts or giving each specific account a nickname. You can also click into each account, and if we go to the next page, there will be a tab that our satellite and host accounts will see that will say solar credits. So on the next slide, let's look at the host view. So this is the host view. It gives a high-level view of each billing period, and then you can click on each billing period to see more detailed transparency into the credit information. So you'll see at the top the 10% under that, that's the billing period information, and then you can expand that. And this is just dummy data right now, but you can imagine it with your real data. And then this data, it is real time, so it is going to update every single day. So the satellite accounts that are under this host account, it will show when that satellite account is billed. We also included an estimated read date column, so you can have an idea of when that satellite account is going to be billed. And something important to point out here is that the satellite accounts need to be linked to the profile in order to see this information. But once the information is there, you can download it for each billing period, and that will actually include more information than which is in the table. So now let's go over to the satellite view. So again, This will be a tab when the user clicks into the account saying solar credits. And again, this is real-time data. So the credits, when they are posted to the account, will show here. And then we also have a column that says added to bill. So they know that the credit is on their account, but it might not be added to the bill yet. And they can also download this information whenever it's needed. So again, this is a new feature that will be coming March 2022 to My Business account. If anyone is interested in registering for My Business account, which is a free National Grid service, we can share the link. And our team also has an email if you need any assistance in creating a profile or would like a walkthrough of the website. And finally, our team is always looking for feedback on how we can add or improve features on My Business account. So there is a give feedback button on My Business account when you sign in, where you can let us know if we can improve this feature or any others that would help you in your process. So thank you. I'll now pass it back to Will Kern.
Thanks, Emily. So I'll just take a quick second here to remind everybody that the link to the form has been posted in the chat for questions to be submitted. So if you do have questions, this is sort of our last section before we start to get into the Q&A section. So if you do have questions, you can start to submit those through there. So I just want to take a couple minutes and talk through some other topics that are really more quick hitters than needing to spend several minutes and multiple slides on. But the first one is around sort of a improvement to our website where we've been posting a lot of ASO related information, information that DG stakeholders would be interested in. So when we first started adding this stuff a couple of years back, we created that site and sort of used that site for many different purposes. So what we wanted to do was set that line of delineation between the topics. So what we did is we wanted to clean things up and put ASO related updates on one page, right? Keep the DG stakeholder meeting information somewhere else. So just some of your old shortcuts may not take you to the exact right page. For now, the old links still work. We do have the new links on those pages. So just take the opportunity if you do go in and look for them to reset up your shortcuts to make sure you are going to the right pages. But that should be more or better organized going forward, a little bit easier to find what it is you're looking for. We've also archived everything on a different web page too. So we were maintaining data for a year on the primary pages, but we didn't want to lose the data. Right, or someone who may have interest in something that was presented or a certain topic that may have happened 12 plus months ago. We want to make sure that access to that is maintained. So you'll see on those pages that there is a link to an archive page for that. As we get into the next topic around PSCAD and PSSE modeling, we're ASO studies are more prominent than they've ever been, right? We have a lot of them going on at any one time. And in those studies, right, we do ask for PSCAD and PSSE models. That's something to be aware of as you do progress your projects through. Maybe something to even get yourself a little bit more familiar with what the asks are. And if you have questions, right, ask those questions now, even if you don't have a project in an ASO study and haven't been requested for those models as of yet. We're happy to take those questions. We're happy to proactively get some answers. So when the time comes, it's a quicker turnaround, right? Any of you who have dealt with some of these models in the past understand there are a lot of complications to them and a lot of back and forth between the transmission planning group, to make sure that those models are sufficient overall. So as we look to keep things moving, process improvements, making sure that we don't get bogged down in any one step of the process. It's important that an understanding of what's required as part of an ASO study is addressed early on. And this is just a link to some additional information that you may or may not have known existed, and something to take a few minutes and take a look at. Another aspect of ASO study here, right, is around projects that are less than or equal to 1 megawatt. Right, traditionally those have not been included in ASO studies. That may not be the case going forward, right? So as of the beginning of this year, if a project that is less than or equal to 1 megawatt is part of a group study, and in the distribution study work that we do prior to kicking off an ASO or transmission study, if it's identified that there's going to be an impact to the transmission system, the distribution system, that is then going to trigger the need for an ASO study, something like, factoring into the overall generation that triggers substation modifications, right? That's something that would generate a transmission study independent of size. So if that's the case, right, then that 1 or sub 1 megawatt system would be included in the transmission study, would be included in any transmission costs and timelines going forward. So just a little bit different as we've grown over time and seen this happen and taken in those lessons learned. We do see an impact by these projects, and we just want to make sure that everybody understands and is not caught off guard, when you are issued an ASO study fee, and you say, hey, my project under 1, this hasn't happened before. Size is not the determinant of whether a project will be in an ASO study going forward. There is other criteria that will ultimately be factored in going forward. This doesn't change anything that's happened in the past. All right, this is being instituted here in 2022. Moving on to a couple different topics, right? The next one is around a developer survey reminder. Many of you may have seen an email from me or George Souza potentially, letting you know that we are going to be sending out a survey, right? We're looking for feedback. We're looking for as many people who are willing to fill it out to give us that information that really starts to drive the things that we want to look at, improve on, what's going well. Those are the type of things that we are looking for. So just a heads up that survey is coming. If you don't get the survey and want to participate in one, please reach out to me and I'll make sure that we get it over to you. Just keep in mind that we are using emails from the portal. So just because you may not get the survey emailed to you doesn't mean that someone else in your organization didn't. So just check with them potentially, right? Knowing that we are utilizing emails that are in the portal, and if that's not something that you're in and working on a periodic basis, you may not be emailed directly. So keep that in mind. The last thing here that we want to touch on is around group studies. Right, earlier in 2021, right, we had the group study provision added to the tariff, and we've basically spent that time learning how to navigate it, right? We have a number of group studies that are active and in flight right now that will be finishing up at various points throughout 2022 here. But what I really want to bring the attention to is sort of the uptick in the number of open group studies that we have across the state, right? So there's no areas of the state that is immune to group studies, not immune to saturation, not immune to the volume of interconnection applications. So it's important that you keep an eye on where those group study windows are being opened, where the active group studies are happening, especially if you have pre-apps that have been submitted or maybe applications that are in a pending status and haven't been submitted. If there's an open group study window, right, you'd want to get in on that as opposed to waiting and having to wait for the group study to play itself out if it is ahead of your project. So as we look in the portal, right, we see a number of projects that are in that status, right, have pre-apps that have been submitted. So we assume that there's a potential project coming, right, or an application that's in a pending status that hasn't been fully submitted and worked through and gotten their queuing date yet. So keep that in mind. If we could move to the next slide. So this is just a quick list or snapshot of where we are seeing group studies. So these are the towns that we're seeing them. You can see there in that second column, right? The green are the ones that have windows open, and the blue are the ones that we have going on in progress, right? So we have a number of group studies in central Western Mass. We have a number of open and active group studies in sort of Southeast Mass here at this point. We have windows open up for additional group studies in each one of those areas of the state. So just keep in mind, as I mentioned before, if you do have projects that are going to be in that area, keep up to speed on when those windows were opened. Generally, we open for 40 business days. Right, and if you do have projects in that area, right, it would be for timing purposes probably important to get in on those group study windows as opposed to waiting until they're completed for us to move on. The other just real quick note here is that just because we identify a town doesn't mean it's every single substation in that town, right? So this is really just a high level snapshot. To be able to show, right? What we couldn't do is list out every single substation here on this one slide. So just keep that in mind. Keep an eye out on your pre-app report, right? These things will be communicated as you progress your projects through, whether it's in a group study, whether there's one that's open. But important to factor that in to your thought process here going forward. The other thing that we'll do is when we post this slide deck, in addition to the recording and all that other stuff, we'll have another map of Massachusetts, right? That'll break down, right, what towns we're seeing group studies get initiated in. So just another visual of the same information, but we'll have that posted along with everything else. All right, if we move to the next slide. All right, so maybe Janelle, if you could take a quick second and bounce us back up to the agenda. We covered a large number of topics here over the course of the last almost hour. So I just want to, flash that agenda back up so everybody knows what topics we've discussed, and if you have questions around those topics, again, if you could submit them through the link posted on the chat. So with that, we do have some questions already delivered, so I will start in on those. So the first one I'll take, right? The question is, where will this recording be posted? And the second portion of that question is the National Grid Rhode Island webinar from October also posted there? So we will send out an email to all the participants afterwards with the link when that has been posted, right? So you will get that. But then the aforementioned new web page, right, around the seminars and other DG stakeholders, information. That's where this will ultimately end up. But we will provide the link for ease of use so that you can see all that. We can get back as part of the Q&A document that we'll post around the Rhode Island seminar and where that is posted. We'll follow up with our counterparts down there and get that posted there. And just I don't know if it's a reminder because I'm not sure how involved people have been listening to it, but National Grid has sold the Rhode Island business to PPL. And that is working through its process with a target date in March for that sale to complete. At that point, Rhode Island will, the Rhode Island business will no longer be part of National Grid. So just a heads up on that for anybody who may not have been aware of what was happening in Rhode Island. So the next question is going to be for you, Emily Slack. So I'll read this and I'll hand it over to you. So the question is, do the extended ESS hours cause a reduction in the charge or discharge level allowed? We would accept multiple charge levels throughout the day to maximize total charging. So I'll hand that over to you.
Yep. So the question is referring to a concept where we, in some instances, working with the customers, perform a curtailment analysis. So within the confines of the National Grid schedule, we would determine the levels to which the battery must be curtailed in order to avoid triggering system modification. So that's the context of the question. And further context is previously the National Grid schedule had aligned more closely with Clean Peak, such that it did not allow any operation, whether charge or discharge, in the overnight hours. With the new expanded schedule, which extends the permissible charge period into the overnight hours, whether that causes an impact to those curtailment factors in that analysis is in many ways case by case. In some instances, we have seen no change. In others, we have seen a reduction in the permissible charge levels for a given season. In most instances, this has been relatively minor, but again, that is a case by case nuance specific to the conditions local to each project. As far as the second part of the question goes regarding accepting multiple charge levels throughout the day to maximize total charging, at this time, National Grid is not allowing multiple charge or discharge factors within a given block or season. It's one curtailment level per charge or discharge behavior per season. All set, Will.
Thank you, Emily. So moving on to the next question, it says for DC coupled systems, and Marissa, this is for you, I apologize. For DC coupled systems, what do you do if your equipment is not listed in the portal?
So I did write back, and I just wanted to verify that when the AC power producing assets do become accessible to you in the real-time environment, you can use the add unlisted AC power producing asset to add the equipment. And then if you do see that equipment more often, or you're using it almost all the time, very frequently, feel free to use the contact us button, and I would have the ability to add that equipment to our catalog. So you would just be able to click it and then fill out kind of like just the quantity of it, and then press save.
Thank you, Marissa.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Tara, the next one is for you around Smart 2 expansion. The question is, how is National Grid tracking incentives for production if they're not effective until the billing cycle following the SOQ issuance? If the meter has been tracking production since the day it was installed, are you just using new meter readings as of the approved billing cycle, or will the first payment for Smart include everything collected by that meter since it was installed?
So the meters will track everything starting from when they're installed and the project receives authority to interconnect. But regarding this, so for projects in blocks 9 through 16, the Smart payments will only begin on a prospective basis after the final SOQ is issued. So in the time between the projects turned on and their incentive effective date, eligible customers will receive either net metering credits or QF payments depending on their size, and are welcome to monetize their RECs through the RPS program.
Great, thank you. John Tortorella, you are up next. The question is, with the incentive level at $0, why would a residential customer still participate in the SMART program? Will building mount adders become available less than 25 kW AC projects?
Yeah, thanks, Will. So for those projects 25 kW or less, the energy storage adder is the only applicable adder still. That can contribute to increasing that incentive rate for those projects. As an alternative, if the customer is not pursuing the energy storage adder for a project of that side, they could consider alternatives to participation in SMART, such as pure net metering, or as Tara mentioned, monetizing the RECs directly through the RPS program.
Thank you. Getting down to the end of questions here, so I'll just mention to anybody, if you do have questions, you can get them submitted in here now as we move through the next couple. So Emily Slack, you're back up here again. The question is, what projects will apply to the charge and discharge requirement announced? Only projects beginning the study process now? What about those with executed ISAs and/or already online?
All right, so the schedule requirement is active as of the beginning of the year. So as of January 3rd, 2022. And they apply to projects that don't have completed impact study results as of that date. So any executed ISAs or study results that were already delivered under a different operating schedule, any projects that are already interconnected are not changed or impacted.
Thank you. Okay, so there was one other question that came through the chat to address the talking points I had around Rhode Island, right? So it says, with the sale of Rhode Island, will we no longer deal with National Grid contacts? That's correct. It's the same people in Rhode Island who you have been dealing with, maybe a couple of changes. So they were National Grid employees. There is obviously some familiarity with all the processes in Rhode Island and consistency there. But no, they will no longer be National Grid employees. They'll be working directly for PPL. They'll be called Rhode Island Energy. But yeah, they will no longer. It will no longer be National Grid at that point. All right, so that is the last submitted question. Actually, no, one more just popped in. So this one is for you, Emily Cayley. I'll read it real quick. It says, can you briefly re-explain the My Business account? And it says, is this for customers or us as solar company to utilize, and how does it get set up?
Yes, thank you. So My Business account it's a website, a National Grid website that anyone is free to use. So customers, solar companies, anyone that has accounts with National Grid or manages accounts with National Grid. If you would like to get this set up, you can reach out to my team, and I'll include in the follow-up, I'll include our email that you can reach out to us. If you already have a National Grid profile, you can use the same credentials to log into My Business account, and all of the accounts that you already have linked will show up on My Business account as well.
Thank you, Emily. And then Jim, I just saw that you posted again in the chat. So that is correct, right? The former or currently and soon to be former National Grid employees who were supporting Rhode Island are moving over to continue to support the Rhode Island business. It's just at the upper levels, they will be working for PPL and no longer National Grid. So again, a lot of consistency there still. John Kennedy is still in charge of that team in Rhode Island, and the majority of his new team is made up of employees who were and have been supporting Rhode Island. So we can talk here real quick to see if any more questions pop up. So last chance to get any questions in. So Jen Shelf, I don't know if you see in the chat, but there was a question specific around the East Bridgewater group study window and when that one may close. So I don't know if you know off the top of your head. If not, then we will get that in, and part of the Q&A doc will post.
Front of me, and I don't want to provide misinformation. So James, I circle back with you. I did also see your email from yesterday, so I owe you a response anyway.
Thank you. Okay. So again, we will be posting this and we will be communicating that link right when it is posted. That will be the slide deck, the Q&A, the map, as I mentioned before, that will highlight the towns that are seeing group studies, either ongoing or being established, in addition to the recording for the presentation topics here. So appreciate.
Hey, Will, Tim Rowan, is it true that in our footprint in Massachusetts, we've got more solar installed than most other states in the country?
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I haven't refreshed the numbers here in a couple of months, right? But Massachusetts was number 2 in the country for DG per square mile, right? So obviously, I think we were number 7-ish, right, in total connected. But comparing to much larger states, right? California, Arizona, those states. So the better stat in my opinion is around the number of DG connected per square mile. Rhode Island was actually number 1, right, based on the size and what's been done down in Rhode Island. But Massachusetts was number 2 in the country on a per mile basis.
And I just put the in the chat the SCA, and these are numbers from the SCIA, not the company, but you'll see actually in Mass we have more than virtually every other state. All the states in Rhode Island combined. Imagine that, just us. So
yes,
because we have what 1,800 megawatts installed in Mass right now, Will, as far as I recall.
Yep, I think that's right around the number. Yep.
So.
Yeah, so I mean, just building off the successes slide from earlier, overall, right? We did talk about the three gigawatts in total from National Grid, but Massachusetts makes up more than half of that. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. I see we've lost a few. We were up at about 140 participants on this call at one point, which is by far the highest we've had. So that's great. Hopefully here in 2022, we'll try to get one of these seminars back in person. But for now, great attendance on this one, and we appreciate everybody taking the time, calling in, and appreciate all the questions and involvement. Everybody have a great rest of the day, and enjoy the warm weather we have up here in Massachusetts today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Will.